We have some more MiniFlex updates today. As you can see on the inside of MiniFlex here, we have a lot of changes that we've made to the MiniFlex build. So this is a heavily modified Dell Optiplex 5070 small form factor. MiniFlex has a full-size graphics card in it. As you can see, that was the big thing that I was trying to do with this build, was fit a full-size graphics card in a small form factor PC case. So we have the 1660 Ti, which will be upgraded later on. We'll get into that. And then we have a Silverstone TX 500, which is a TFX power supply. We have a Noctua L9i with the fan duct mod. We have two NVMe SSDs, one in an adapter that's kind of hidden back here, and then one that's underneath the graphics card. But if we flip to the front panel of the computer here, you can see that the front panel looks pretty stock. However, I managed to find a pretty beat up front panel on eBay that was being sold for about $5, and I've cut up the fan grill kind of mesh that's on the front of this, and I glued it to the CD drive bay just to get a little bit more airflow in the front panel for the graphics card so it can breathe a little bit better. On the back of MiniFlex, you can see that we have quite a bit going on here. So we have the two exhaust fans in the back on the holes that were already existing in MiniFlex. And then if we move down to the PCIe slots here, we have two of them populated here. So the blank one is for the NVMe M.2 2230 adapter that I have that's plugged into the X4 slot on the motherboard. And then below that we have our video extensions. If you have a look at where the graphics card's located, the graphics card's located on the side here and the video ports point upwards here. So you cannot get your video cables such as the display port or the HDMI port plugged into your graphics card. So what I've had to do is I've had to run extensions all the way to the back of the computer here so you can plug them in right here, and it's just a little bit of a cleaner look. I really prefer panel mounts than running cables all the way through the computer, out the back of the PCIe slot, and then to your monitor. It just looks not great. The only problem with these guys here is this DisplayPort connector, panel mount connector, is DisplayPort 1.2. It is not 1.2a, which there is a big difference because that allows adaptive sync, such as FreeSync and G-Sync. So it's not possible to use those on MiniFlex yet. I'm looking into fixing that, but we will do that in a future video. And then we also have our HDMI 1.4 port there as well. We have drilled holes in the bottom of MiniFlex just so we can get some more ventilation from the bottom of the graphics card and some ventilation into the power supply as well on MiniFlex. And if we rotate it to the top here, you can see that I've drilled a crap ton of holes in MiniFlex. And I've put 3 fans on the top of MiniFlex for more exhaust. So let's get into the parts that I've thrown into MiniFlex and the parts that I'm going to use to upgrade this guy here in today's video. First, let's start off with the processor that's in the proprietary Dell motherboard for MiniFlex. We currently have an i5 9500 in MiniFlex, and this guy is turning out to be a little bit of a bottleneck for the GPU. So on my searches on Kijiji, I found a Intel i7 9700, which has 2 more cores and 2 more threads and runs at a higher frequency. So this little guy should definitely help out with our new GPU. We picked up a Dell OEM RTX 2060. Now this graphics card originally comes bundled in an Alienware desktop, and I found this guy for $350 on Kijiji, which is a really good deal for an RTX 2060. So the last upgrade that we'll be doing in today's video is going to be adding an iNeo M4 active M.2 heatsink to the Samsung 970 EVO Plus that is in MiniFlex, because the 970 EVO Plus is actually running at about 80 degrees Celsius because it lives underneath the GPU. So that little fan should definitely help with the temperatures and cooling our M.2. I also forgot to mention that I picked up the fan duct mod that Noctua makes for the L9i. So hopefully this helps with the temperatures on the new 9700 that we have. I can't get this thing to function properly. Whenever it is in MiniFlex, it seems to kind of thermal throttle. I think it's something to do with the V-BIOS that Dell has put on the 2060, because it gets super aggressive with dropping its power draw for these GPU die. So it actually drops its clock frequency as well, which is very strange as soon as it gets hot. If I have it on an open air test bench though, this seems to function properly, so this obviously isn't going to work properly for MiniFlex, so we're going to need to go with a plan B, and the plan B is to sell this thing, which is another reason why I made the custom backplate to it, just to kind of give the new owner a nice look instead of the green PCB. I made this out of acrylic and vinyl, but I'm going to sell this guy, and then we're going to go with an EVGA RTX 2060. It's actually got the same cooler as the 1660 Ti that I currently have in MiniFlex, so this guy is going. 2 weeks into the future now, our graphics card for MiniFlex has finally arrived. So our RTX 2060 from EVGA, this is the bookend to the 1660 Ti that's already in MiniFlex. So it's got the same cooler, it is the same dimensions, so we have 100% compatibility with this GPU fitting inside MiniFlex. And we're going to just quickly open up the box. So let's have a look here. They did mention on the eBay ad this graphics card was kind of dirty, and I can definitely see that it is kind of dirty. Wow, the IO shield is disgusting. Wow, whoa. that is kind of nasty. I'm not too sure how well you can see that on camera, but it is very grungy and grimy. Flipping over to the back side of the GPU, there is a missing screw for the IO shield. And let's just have a quick look at the components here, and oh no. We have found an issue. This spot right here is a lifted trace. So whatever this connects to is not gonna work. Unfortunately, it looks like this card, judging by that lifted trace here, has a dead DVI port. We will only be using the HDMI and the DVI on this card, so bummer, but it doesn't affect us for today's video. So we got lucky. We will not be using the IO shield here, so I'm gonna take it off. We don't need it. And on comes off the IO. Oh, whoa. I don't know if this card got super hot or if that's just the way these things are made, but whoa. Does that look like it ever got hot? All right, so we have a few concerning things about this RTX 2060. Okay, oh no. Oh, there's so much disgustingness in this. Oh no. Oh no. Yikes. This fan is disgusting. I will take it out and I will show you all just how nasty this fan is underneath. Oh boy. Hopefully this card works. If it doesn't work, I'll be so mad. Okay, all the screws are out of the fan, some moment of truth here. Oh no way, oh no. Oh no, oh no. Oh, that is disgusting. Oh no. I am actually surprised this fan's still gonna work. Oh no. Okay, I need to get my air gun, because that's nasty. Oh no. Okay, so we have the card reassembled and cleaned. That was disgusting. Just to give you a preview of what I was dealing with. Look at that. Oh, it's so gross. I'm gonna have to wash my hands after this. But it's all cleaned out, all repasted, everything like that. So we are going to fully reassemble this bad boy. We're gonna put the shroud back on here, and we are going to hopefully get a test boot out of this thing. I'm not entirely, shall we say, confident in this thing, but I'm gonna give it about an 80% shot. Hopefully this works. I don't know if it will. All right, all clean and all assembled. Let's get MiniFlex going here. All right, we have the RTX 2060 plugged into MiniFlex, and it's mostly clean. I missed a few spots by the looks of it, but that's okay. Hopefully everything works. So we're gonna go ahead and plug in MiniFlex now. Cross our fingers. Okay, so it should fire up. We do have fan spin and everything like that, so that's good. Hopefully the graphics card fan turns off. All right, and power button. Let's see if we get a post. Hopefully the RTX 2060 posts. If it doesn't, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Oh, thank goodness, that scared the crap out of me. Oh, I was getting a little nervous. I was looking too to check, make sure my HDMI was plugged in. So we have a successful post on MiniFlex, thank God. I was getting a little worried there. All right, I guess we have benchmarks to do for MiniFlex now. So with that boot up scare out of the way, let's jump into the benchmarks. And as always, the first game that we're gonna be benchmarking is Apex Legends. We're gonna first start off with 1080p and then move into the 1440p benchmarks. The charts this time around are gonna be a little bit different. I'm gonna have the comparison for the i7-9700 with the RTX 2060 versus the i5-9500 with the 1660 Ti. So let's just jump right into the charts. The updated version of MiniFlex with the RTX 2060 and the i7-9700 is going to be in orange, and the i5-9500 with the 1660 Ti is going to be in blue. With that said, obviously Apex Legends is maxed out at 145 FPS. As for the average FPS, we saw an average of 139 versus 136, so a little bit of a bump there, not too much. A minimum FPS of 97 versus 89, so this is where we're kind of seeing the jump or the gap in performance between the 2060 and the 1660 Ti. We got a 1% low of 95 versus 90, and a 0.1% low of 78 versus 81. So the 0.1% low was a little bit worse on the 2060 with the 9700. So as you can see, there's not quite as much of a jump in performance between the 9700 with the 2060 and the 9500 with the 1660 Ti. So if you're looking to play Apex Legends in 1080p, I would recommend going with the i5-9500 and the 1660 Ti. Moving on to the 1440p benchmarks for Apex Legends. With the bump in resolution from 1080p to 1440p, this is where we really see the RTX 2060 stretch its legs compared to the 1660 Ti. So with that said, we got a maximum FPS of 145 versus 134, an average FPS of 118 versus 97, a minimum FPS of 59 versus 61, a 1% low of 78 versus 63, and a 0.1% low of 60 versus 51. So as you can see, there is quite the performance difference between the 2060 and the 1660 Ti version of MiniFlex. And me personally, I said last time that I would not play the game in 1440p because it's not high enough average FPS. But right now with the 2060 and the 9700, it is reaching 118 FPS average, which is really close to that 120 frames per second benchmark that I really want to get out of Apex Legends. So me personally, I would actually play in 1440p. Moving on to the next game that we'll be benchmarking, that's going to be Battlefield 5. So we're going to use the 1080p resolution and the medium preset with blur, chromatic aberration, vignette, and grain off. So looking at the comparison chart between the previous version of MiniFlex and the current updated version, we have a maximum FPS of 121 versus 121, an average FPS of 117 versus 112, a minimum FPS of 88 versus 86, a 1% low of 86 versus 60, and a 0.1% low of 34 versus 21. As you can see from that chart there is not too much of a difference between the 1660 Ti version of MiniFlex and the 2060 version of MiniFlex. So if you're planning on playing Battlefield 5, then I just recommend going with the 1660 Ti. The only improvement in performance that we really saw was the 0.1% low of 34 versus 21, which made the game just slightly smoother. Bumping up the resolution to 1440p using the low preset for Battlefield 5, we got the same maximum FPS of 121 for both machines, and an average FPS of 110 versus 113. Weirdly enough, the 1660 Ti outpaced the 2060 there. A minimum FPS of 77 versus 64, a 1% low of 57 versus 50, a 0.1% low of 30 versus 12. Now, as you can see, we got a little bit of a performance bump on 1440p. The main thing that saw an improvement again was the 0.1% lows. So as you can see, not too much of a difference, but the 0.1% low was a lot better on the 2060, and the minimum FPS as well was a little bit better on the 2060. Moving on to our third game, which is going to be Doom 2016. The first benchmark is at 1080p using the Ultra preset, except with motion blur off. When we look at the comparison chart, you'll see that the maximum FPS for both machines is maxed out at 200, and the average FPS for the 2060 was 198 versus 189. The minimum FPS was 157 versus 148, a 1% low of 139 versus 124, and a 0.1% low of 115 versus 99. Looking at this comparison chart, it's a little bit interesting as compared to the last two games we benchmarked at 1080p. The last two games didn't really see much of an improvement between the 2060 and the 1660 Ti, but with Doom we see a little bit of an improvement gain with the 2060. So bumping up that resolution to 1440p, again using the Ultra preset saw massive gains compared to the 1660 Ti. So looking at the chart, we got a maximum FPS of 200 versus 170, an average FPS of 181 versus 128, a minimum FPS of 136 versus 95, a 1% low of 125 versus 89, and a 0.1% low of 102 versus 79. So we got some massive gains when bumping up the resolution with the 2060 compared to the 1660 Ti when running Doom 2016. Moving on to our final game, which is obviously going to be The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. With this benchmark, this was running 1080p using the high preset except with motion blur off. So if we look at the benchmarking chart here, we got 125 maximum FPS versus 96, an average FPS of 111 versus 84, a minimum FPS of 102 versus 75, a 1% low of 99 versus 72, and a 0.1% low of 88 versus 69. So as you can see, we got some pretty big massive gains with the 2060 over the 1660 Ti and the i5 9500. Very similar to how we saw performance improvements with Doom 2016. Bumping up that resolution to 1440p, except using the medium preset this time, we saw quite some more massive gains for The Witcher 3. So with the maximum FPS was 127 versus 89, the average FPS was 114 versus 88, the minimum FPS was 94 versus 87, 1% low was 92 versus 80, and the 0.1% low was 83 versus 80. So as you can see, we got some very big performance improvements with the 2060 over the 1660 Ti on The Witcher 3 at 1440p. With those benchmarks out of the way, that is going to conclude today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you guys want to see more content like MiniFlex in the future, I recommend hitting that subscribe button and that like button. I'd very much appreciate it. Let me know what you guys think of MiniFlex's improvements in the comment section below. I'm very curious to see what you guys think of the improvements on MiniFlex. We're going to try and improve MiniFlex as always, but we'll see if we can stuff a 3060 into this bad boy in the near future if I can get it to fit. With that said, my time here is done, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.